They said he was broken, that he would never speak, never learn, never matter. But the boy they doubted became the man who changed the course of humanity. Welcome to the story of Albert Einstein. Not just the genius, but the boy, the dreamer, the soul who refused to give up. Let's go back to the very beginning. The house was quiet, too quiet for a family waiting to hear their child speak his first words. Little Albert stared at the world with wide, wondering eyes, but he didn't talk. Not at 1, not at 2, not even at 3. His parents worried. His mother, Pauline, tried everything, singing lullabies, pointing to pictures, whispering stories into his ear. But Albert said nothing, not a word. Neighbors whispered. Relatives offered advice no one wanted. Maybe he's slow. Something's not right with him. Perhaps he'll never speak at all. But Pauline, she never gave up hope. And then, one evening, during dinner, at nearly 4 years old, Albert opened his mouth and calmly said, "The soup is too hot." Stunned silence. His parents froze. Then tears filled their eyes. They weren't just hearing words. They were witnessing a miracle. Albert wasn't silent because he couldn't speak. He was silent because he was thinking. From the very beginning, Albert saw the world differently. While other children played with toys, he sat alone, lost in thought. He loved building towers from playing cards, hours and hours, focused, calm, curious. But with his silence came isolation. Other kids didn't understand him. He didn't laugh at their games. He didn't run with the crowd. He asked strange questions, questions no one could answer. Why does a compass needle always point north? What is light made of? Why does time never stop? Questions far too big for a child, but too urgent to ignore. And then came the violin. His mother placed it gently in his hands. "Play," she said. "Feel the music." And he did. Not just with his fingers, but with his soul. Music became his friend, the only language that made sense in a noisy world. When life felt too confusing, he turned to melody, and in the silence between the notes, his mind came alive. But school? That was a nightmare. The teachers didn't understand him. He didn't memorize like the other kids. He didn't follow instructions without question. He asked why too much. He questioned everything. And for that, they called him difficult. They told his parents, "He'll never amount to much." Imagine hearing that. Imagine being told your child, your curious, thoughtful, beautiful child, is a failure. But Pauline believed, and Albert kept thinking, kept dreaming. One day, his father gave him a small compass. A simple object, really. But in Albert's hands, it became a universe. He stared at the needle as it danced with invisible forces. No matter which way he turned, it always pointed north. How? Why? That compass didn't just point north. It pointed to a destiny. A child once thought to be broken was already building the mind that would shake the very foundations of the universe. The classroom was cold, not from the weather, but from the silence that followed every time young Albert raised his hand. He didn't fit in, and everyone knew it. Teachers frowned when he questioned their lessons. Students rolled their eyes when he didn't follow the rules. Albert didn't just want to know what, he needed to know why. But school wasn't built for minds like his. He sat in the back, quiet but burning inside. His mind raced with thoughts bigger than the classroom walls could hold. Why did time always move forward? What was space, really? Could light bend? But none of that mattered to the teachers. They wanted obedience, memorization, uniformity, and Albert was none of those things. One day, a teacher looked him straight in the eye and said, "You'll never be anything." Can you imagine? To be told as a child that your curiosity is a curse? Albert didn't cry. He didn't fight. He just walked home in silence. But that night, alone in his room, he stared out the window. The stars above didn't laugh. They didn't judge. They simply existed, glowing, constant, mysterious. And something inside him whispered, "There's more." Still, the rejection hurt. He withdrew further. He hated the rigid drills of school. He struggled with rote learning, hated repetition, despised authority. Even his family worried. Would he ever find his place? And then, one day, something changed. A family friend noticed his spark, a quiet engineer named Max Talmud. He gave Albert a book, just a small book, meant for curious minds. It was about mathematics. In that moment, something clicked. The numbers weren't just numbers. They were keys, unlocking secret doors in his mind. Equations didn't just make sense. They sang. They felt like music. Albert read for hours, forgetting to eat, forgetting to sleep. The logic, the patterns, the purity, it made the world feel less chaotic. For the first time, he wasn't alone. With every formula, every problem solved, he felt more alive. His mind, once misunderstood, was finally at home. He started writing his own problems, solving puzzles in his head. Math became his refuge, his rebellion, his freedom. But still, school didn't see it. They labeled him lazy, disrespectful. One principal even suggested he drop out. And eventually, he did. Albert left without a diploma. No grand farewell, no applause, just a quiet exit. He walked away, not because he gave up, but because he refused to be molded. And behind that soft voice and distant gaze was a fire that no school could extinguish. The train to Switzerland rattled beneath his feet. Albert looked out the window, not at the mountains, but beyond them. He wasn't running away. He was searching for a place where his mind could breathe. He was just 16. No diploma, no direction, only a heart full of questions and a head bursting with thoughts no one else seemed to care about. He had applied to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich. He failed the entrance exam. Math and science, he aced them. But the other subjects, French, literature, history, brought his dream crashing down. Rejected again. But someone saw something in him. A second chance was offered. Finish high school in Switzerland, then come back. So he did. He studied hard, graduated, and finally, he entered university. You'd think this was the moment everything got better. It wasn't. University was different, but not easier. His classmates were older, more disciplined. Albert, he skipped lectures, argued with professors. He couldn't stand rote learning. He wanted understanding, not obedience. He spent more time alone than in class. Long walks, quiet cafes, starry nights, always thinking. His professors didn't like him. They saw him as lazy, rebellious, arrogant. He wasn't. He was just different. In his solitude, the universe spoke to him, not in words, but in wonders. Why does light move the way it does? Is time truly constant? Can energy and mass be the same? These thoughts weren't just academic. They consumed him. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't let go. But while his thoughts soared, his life fell apart. He graduated, barely. No professor would recommend him. No one offered him a job. He sent letter after letter, begging for work. Nothing. Einstein, the man we now celebrate, was at that time unemployed, broke. He walked the streets of Zurich with holes in his shoes and heaviness in his heart. And still, he didn't stop thinking. He'd sit by the river and close his eyes. And in his mind, he was riding on a beam of light. He imagined himself flying alongside it, feeling the waves of the universe ripple around him. Who does that? Who dreams like that when the world won't even give you a desk to work at? Someone who refuses to give up. Eventually, a small opportunity came, not from a university, but from a friend. A job offer at a patent office in Bern. Not a dream, not even science, just paperwork. But Albert took it, not because it was perfect, but because it gave him one thing he needed more than anything: time. And in the silence between the stamps, in the gaps between the laws and legal language, Albert Einstein would begin to shape a new world. The walls were gray. The work was boring. Albert Einstein sat at a desk in the Swiss patent office, surrounded by silence and stamps. Every day, he reviewed other people's inventions, machines, diagrams, devices. It wasn't science. It wasn't glory. It was survival. But no one knew what was happening in his mind. Because when the world turned off its lights, Einstein's imagination switched on. Every night after work, he sat at his tiny desk in his tiny apartment, scribbling ideas into notebooks. No lab, no funding, no audience, just questions, just fire, just belief. He was obsessed. He imagined trains racing toward clocks. He pictured beams of light bending through space. He dreamed of time slowing down, of gravity stretching space like fabric. And all of it, in the quiet between responsibilities. No one believed in him. No university would hire him. No scientist would answer his letters. But he kept going, not for fame, not for approval, because he had to. He felt something stirring, something no one else had put into words. In 1905, he couldn't hold it in anymore. That year, Albert Einstein published 4 scientific papers. Not 1, 4. He didn't have a PhD. He didn't have a title. He was a nobody in the academic world. But the ideas, they were revolutionary. In one of them, he proposed something insane for the time. Time is not fixed. Light has no mass, but acts like it does. Energy and mass, they're two sides of the same coin. E equals mc squared. The world ignored it at first. Too radical, too strange. How could these thoughts, these wild ideas, come from a clerk? But slowly, something shifted. A few scientists took notice, then more. Then the world had to stop and look again. Who is this man? Where did he come from? And just like that, the man once rejected by schools, ignored by professors, passed over by universities, but fame doesn't feel the way people think it does. For Albert, it brought pressure, scrutiny, responsibility, and the same questions that once made him invisible now made him famous. Still, in the quiet of his soul, Einstein remained the same, a dreamer, a thinker, a man chasing the truth, not the spotlight. He was no longer invisible, no longer the outcast, the questioner, the silent dreamer. Albert Einstein had become the name on every newspaper. After years of rejection, ridicule, and solitude, the world finally noticed. 1919, a solar eclipse confirmed what no one had dared to believe. Einstein's theory of relativity wasn't just imagination. It was real. Light from distant stars bent around the sun, exactly as he predicted. In that moment, everything changed. Einstein overturns Newton. The headlines screamed, "Revolution in science." He woke up one morning, and the world knew his name. And with it came a storm. Reporters at his door, letters flooding in from every continent, speeches, interviews, invitations to dine with kings and presidents. The boy who once barely spoke was now asked to speak everywhere. People saw his messy hair, his soft eyes, his worn coat, and they saw magic. But they didn't see the weight. They didn't see the exhaustion behind the smile, the burden of being a symbol, the pressure to be perfect. He tried to laugh it off. He called fame a mask that eats the face. Everywhere he went, people asked about relativity, but no one asked how he felt. He missed his quiet walks, his long nights of thought, the simplicity of the patent office where the world left him alone. Behind closed doors, he struggled. His marriage was falling apart. He missed his sons. He questioned himself. Was he still a thinker, or had he become a performer? He never chased the spotlight. It found him. And now, it wouldn't let go. Still, he didn't stop searching. Fame hadn't changed his purpose. He wasn't in love with being celebrated. He was in love with truth. So he kept asking questions. He searched for something deeper, a theory that would explain everything, something beyond gravity, beyond space, beyond time, a unified field. The work consumed him. While the world clapped, Albert kept working in silence, because no matter how famous he became, he was still that little boy with the compass, still chasing something no one else could see. Berlin, 1933. Smoke rose into the sky. Books burned in the streets, and fear crept into the hearts of millions. Germany was changing, fast, and Albert Einstein saw it coming. He had returned to his homeland a hero, celebrated, admired, even worshipped. But that love didn't last. He was Jewish. He was outspoken. He was different. And in a rising world of hate, those three things became dangerous. The Nazis called his science Jewish physics. They ransacked his home, put a bounty on his head, labeled him an enemy of the state. But Einstein didn't hide. He spoke out, loudly. He denounced Hitler, warned the world. While others stayed silent, he refused. And for that, he lost everything: his home, his position, his safety. He fled Germany with just a suitcase and heartbreak. The place he once loved had turned its back on him. But Albert, the man who had searched the universe for truth, now searched for peace. He arrived in America, a stranger, not a hero, not yet, just a man with wild hair, tired eyes, and a fire in his heart. He found refuge in Princeton, not a castle, not a lab filled with gold, just a quiet office, a blackboard, a place to think. But this time, his thoughts weren't just about physics. They were about humanity. He had seen what hatred could do. He had lived through exile. And he had one message: peace is not a dream. It is the only real thing worth working for. He joined causes, spoke for justice, fought against racism in America, fought for civil rights, for nuclear disarmament, for human dignity. When the United States considered building the atomic bomb, it was Einstein's letter, warning of German capabilities, that triggered the Manhattan Project. But it haunted him. He hadn't built the bomb. He hadn't dropped it. But he had opened the door, and it broke his heart. He later said, If I had known, I would have become a watchmaker. Because Albert Einstein wasn't just a scientist. He was a man who believed that knowledge without compassion is dangerous. The chalkboard sat untouched, the numbers on it unfinished. In a quiet room in Princeton, Albert Einstein lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He was 86, his hair still wild, his eyes still full of wonder. But his body was tired. Doctors came. He refused surgery. "I want to go when I want to go," he said. "It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go." And with that, he let go. April 18th, 1955. The mind that changed the world went silent. But Einstein never truly left. In those final years, he no longer chased fame. No lectures, no press tours, just simplicity. Walking, reading, writing letters. Always curious, always humble. He'd sit by the window and watch the world go by. Children playing, birds flying, leaves rustling in the wind. And he would smile, because he understood something most people never do. The universe doesn't need to be controlled. It needs to be understood. He never owned a car, never wore socks, never cared for titles or money. What he valued most was truth, peace. People asked him, "What's the most important question we can ask?" He answered, "Is the universe a friendly place?" Because to him, science wasn't cold, it wasn't mechanical, it was full of beauty, mystery, emotion. He didn't believe in success as the world saw it. He believed in kindness, in curiosity, in using your mind to serve your heart. Even after all the awards, all the recognition, he said, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." Let that sink in. Albert Einstein, the symbol of genius, believed curiosity mattered more than genius. He left behind no fortune, no mansion, no empire, only ideas, and the message that anyone, no matter where they start, can change the world if they dare to think differently. So what do we learn from him? That it's okay to be misunderstood, that it's okay to be different, that silence can hold genius, and doubt can spark destiny. And that sometimes the greatest minds aren't the ones who shout the loudest. They're the ones who sit quietly and listen to the stars. Like this video to remind yourself that greatness often begins in silence. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been doubted, someone who's ready to rise. And subscribe to English Chapter, because we bring you real stories that awaken something inside. Your journey is just beginning. We're here to walk it with you.